If you ask me, riding motorbike abroad is the absolute best way to explore a country and have an adventure. In fact, all my first riding experiences have been in foreign countries, from the first time I got a ride on the back of a dirt bike in the middle of nowhere in Uganda, to riding all over North Vietnam with my best friend on a Honda dirt bike. So I'm making this video to hopefully put right where I went wrong and give you the information what I wish I knew when I first started riding abroad. I'm going to break it down section by section, covering everything from rules of the road, what you can expect to see with other drivers, how to keep safe, what types of bikes and gear you can expect, the costs of it, where to go and how to find the best routes, and even what kind of documents you need. I'm even going to take you to get an actual IDP to show you how allegedly simple the process is. So follow along. If you have any questions, then drop them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. And if you like this and it's useful, then please like and subscribe to follow the rest of my adventures. Perhaps the most obvious difference, and the first question a lot of you are going to have, is what is the traffic like and what's it like to ride outside of a country with kind of really developed infrastructure like the UK. And it is crazy, but it's a kind of organised chaos. That's what I've found. A lot of these countries in Southeast Asia especially are often primarily Buddhist, and you need to go with that kind of Buddhist approach to riding in those countries because you need to go with the flow. Give way signs, stop signs and those kind of things, they are present, although to a lesser degree, but whether or not anyone actually listens to them is a completely different issue. You always need to have your wits about you and expect the unexpected. People don't really do signalling, and people push through and barge in, but not in a rude or aggressive way. You have to drive a little bit assertively, but also be cautious of everyone else around you. If people anticipate you're going to be going somewhere, then they will slow down for you. Road conditions in general though are probably better than you might imagine. Now of course there typically aren't as many true paved roads, particularly in places like Cambodia. You're going to be mainly off-road all the time. However, where there are roads, because they're usually major kind of arterial roads, usually they're pretty good. This is a pretty bad example because this road here is absolutely immaculate. But to be honest, many of the roads in the UK are actually worse than roads in Southeast Asia. Some of the best roads I've ever ridden on are the roads around Lombok, the Lombok Coastal Road, and the roads all over Katbar. Because a lot of these countries are having big infrastructure developments to support tourism and a growing population, a lot of these are freshly laid tarmac. So many of the potholes in the UK may be right in the middle of the road on a motorway or a main road. You're already going at top speed, 70 miles an hour, and literally never more than that if you're watching this from the DVSA. If you hit one of those that comes out of nowhere, it's very hard to shift, adjust or adapt. Whereas in Southeast Asia, because if you're on a road, you can tell more or less from the start if it's trash or not. You can kind of limit your speed and then limit the risk factor. What you can't predict is what's round the corner. Most places outside of the West have a very relaxed approach to health and safety. So that means that often you might go around a corner and there is a huge construction works in front of you, cars parked on the side of the road, even people setting up a food truck or food stall. Could be fallen trees that haven't been tended to, all sorts of things, and even just people allowing their pets to run straight out into the road. That happened to me in Vietnam. I almost hit a dog going of over 80 kilometers an hour. That could have ended nasty. So you always need to drive to where you can actually see. Don't assume what's around the corner is going to be exactly as it is going into it as when you come out of it. Something that sounds obvious but often gets overlooked is the fact you're driving on the other side of the road. So roundabouts are hard enough, especially if you're at American, but once they're flipped, because you have to give way to the opposite side, then it can be quite confusing. Now, don't worry, you do adapt to this pretty quickly, and in many ways, doing it on a motorbike is slightly easier, because the controls are still the same way round. You just have to make sure you're on the right side of the road. But especially if you're used to riding, your muscle memory can kick in, and if you're not paying attention and not really switched on, it can be very confusing when you come to a junction or a roundabout knowing which way to go.
My bike is not a rental, so I'm fueling up with premium, which is like 140 140 a litre in the UK. That is daylight shrubbery. But riding costs in other parts of the world, and especially Southeast Asia, are much lower. Fuel you can expect to pay sort of under £1 almost certainly per litre, especially if you're buying it from a proper petrol station. Prices range from about like 60p on the lower end to up to about 80p in places like Thailand. Usually Indonesia, I think, has had the cheapest fuel.
But of course you have to rent the motorbike itself, and those prices vary quite a lot, and that depends mainly on the bike you get. So for a little scooter like a Honda Scoopy or something like that, that's really common out all over Southeast Asia, it can be as little as £2 a day, and usually shouldn't be more than £5 a day, especially unless you're in somewhere super touristy and you're getting scammed like you're in Bali. If you do want something a bit more than that, like you want something with more capacity, maybe something like an NMAX or something more comfortable, that can be almost up to £10 a day. And if you want kind of like a proper motorbike, like the CRF 150L that I rode around North Vietnam, then that was costing me about $20 a day. Riding in the UK, at least, the general attitude is that it is all the gear all the time. But in Southeast Asia and pretty much all other parts of the world that I'm aware of, it's none of the gear all of the time. And this is one of the aspects of traveling in another country where listening to the locals isn't really the best idea. I can tell you, not in Indonesia, not in Thailand, not in Malaysia, not anywhere does anyone wear any kind of decent helmet or proper gear. The helmets honestly do about as much good as a wet piece of tissue paper when you're wiping your ass after a particularly tricky poo. They will just wear through at any minute. But you should wear one anyway. You don't want to end up with a fine. And I guess something is better than nothing. However, if traveling on a motorbike is likely to be a very key piece of your adventure, then it might be worth investing in a better helmet. Usually you can buy better stuff in the bigger cities where they might have proper motorcycle dealerships. Or if you're going specifically to ride your bike abroad, why not just stick it in the carry-on? If nothing else, bringing a helmet, decent riding boots with padding and some gloves is going to make falling off a whole lot worse. Expect to drop the bike at some point. I dropped mine countless times. So having a little bit of gear, a little bit of protection, if you're anything like me, it's going to give you a bit more confidence, and you're probably going to enjoy it a lot more. Renting motorbikes in Southeast Asia and other parts of the world, from what I'm aware, couldn't be easier. Generally, all you need is your license and some cash. Some places, they aren't even going to check if you have a license. The responsibility is on you to make sure you've got everything, and to be honest, they're going to go after you for the fine, not the local shops, because you've probably got more money than all the local shops. So that's who they're going to try and squeeze. So it's your risk and your responsibility. when you do go and rent anything from these shops, then it's a good idea to closely inspect the bikes and make a note of any damage and stuff. Definitely point this out to the person in the shop, but it's not quite like renting from Avis where they give you like a little paper sheet and you have to note on any scratches or scuffs. It would be much better to take videos of the whole bike and then photos of the things that you actually notice. Then you've got a record with a date, and it makes it much harder for them to try and squeeze you for cash. Now, I have to say, I've never had any issues at all, not even a whiff of someone saying that I might have damaged the bike if I had. And actually, I have returned bikes where I have scratched them or scuffed them and expected that to pay a little bit for a repair, and they said, no, this is no problem. So the famous hospitality and goodwill of people in these Southeast Asian countries is true and right on theme, even when it comes to renting motorbikes. But it's better to be safe than sorry. If you do rent a bike, then you're probably going to be asked to give some ID too. That's probably not a scam, it's very normal. That ID that they're going to usually want is going to be a passport. If you can avoid giving them your passport, it's probably for the best. See if they'll take any kind of photo ID, because if they do have the passport and you get in an accident or you damage the bike or even it just gets stolen, you don't really have much bargaining power there because you can't leave the country without it, especially if you're at the end of the visa. It's not a fun situation to be in. So much better you give a driving license, and if there is two of you, giving your girlfriend's driving license. That's what I do every time. Works a treat. Now, what documentation do you need to take with you when you're riding abroad? Well, obviously that depends on the country, so do your own research. Section over. But one thing you almost always need is a driver's license. That sounds obvious, but some people think that just because they're a foreigner, they don't need one. And I say almost always because some countries you don't actually need one for certain capacity bikes. For example, in Cambodia, I think up to 125cc, when I was there, didn't require any license at all. But these things change all the time. So most of the time you do need a license. And your license should actually cover what type of motorbike you're using. So if you've got a normal driver's license in the UK, you can ride a 50cc motorbike. That doesn't mean that you can go and ride a 250cc or even a 125cc scooter out in Asia and try and blag that it's on your license. Insurance too. You will need insurance, boring as it is and often very expensive. If you're renting a bike, you're pretty much never going to get insurance included in that. So you'll need to get your own, and getting your own in the country, you might not be able to purchase it as you're someone who's not a citizen, and if you haven't got a bike license at all, then you're not getting anything, so don't even bother. So that means you'll probably have to see if your travel insurance will cover it, although your travel insurance will do anything they can to wiggle out of covering you for absolutely anything for any reason. And then you might need to buy specialist insurance, but I don't know where you can get it and whether it's reasonably priced. If you know any kind of top tips about getting insurance, then drop that in the comments, because you'll be helping out me and a lot of other people. But what really becomes a problem is if you end up getting in a crash and it affects someone else. Because especially if you hit a local or anything like that, because then suddenly you have to navigate what is often already a pretty sticky and confusing legal system, even for someone who lives in that country. So for you as a foreigner who doesn't know the language, good luck. And then you could end up with prison time or millions and millions of pounds in kind of compensation. That would be worst case scenario. So should you get it? Yes. Other things you might need is you might need an international driving permit. Now, most of the world, I think, uses a 1949 code driving permit. unless you're planning to go to Iran or Somalia. But that would be some pretty adventurous motorcycle travel, especially right now. So just one type of IDP was enough. Now, you used to be able to get that from the post office in the UK, but as with everything in the UK, everything was sold to the highest bidder, including your soul, no matter the inconvenience that it causes the consumer. So now you have to go to a pay point shop, and that is actually where I'm on the way to now. I'm gonna go and get an IDP. You just need a driver's license, and the IDP is going to carry across the information on your driver's license to the international driving permit, and it's basically just evidence that you have got the certifications that you say you have. I think it costs £5. Apparently it is very easy and painless, and you only need to take your photo card driving license and maybe some passport photos. Let's find out. Let's see exactly what I do need, and if it's as painless as everyone claims it is, although I have a suspicion that there's going to be something that's not clear on the website and they're going to turn me away. So that is my next step. So I'm here now. Supposedly I should be able to get my IDP here. So let's see if it is easy and painless as it claims to be on the website. And as well as the IDP, this shop, very interestingly, sell nipple tassels. Pasties. Not sure why they're advertising that with pies, but let's go inside. Can I get an international driving permit here? Yeah. I can. Is it easy? Okay, he was very knowledgeable. I do need passport photos. So I'm going to get some passport photos done and then go back.
We recommend removing glasses if you can.
Mate. What is that?
Please select an option to start.
I don't even accept that. Okay, we're back now. We try again. So I know what I need now. Okay. I do need a 1968 and the 1949. So I've got to do about 10 minutes of sunbathing because that's how long it takes for me to process it, and then I'm going to get my two international driving permits. They look very old school, like paper licenses, so I'll show you in a minute. But the 1949 one is valid only for 1 year, but that's less common. You need those for, I would say, the easiest way to say it is kind of more adventurous countries. More of the countries in Africa need it. You need it for like Albania and Bosnia, so that's why I need one. And the 1968 one is valid for 3 years, and that's for the majority of countries. Obviously, if you're just going around the EU, you don't really need one at all. I think the 1926 one you need for like Mexico, Iran, Somalia. But as I said before, whether or not you actually need it at all is a bit up for discussion, because depending on what website you check, what form you put your information into, it will tell you that you do or you don't need different ones, and it's very hard to get a straight answer. So basically, take it as a bit of a backup, because often if you do get stopped and people ask you your documentation, the police officer that stops you knows just about as much as the traffic regulations as you do in some circumstances. So just to be able to give them as much official kind of paperwork looking stuff as possible can get you out of trouble, because they don't have to go up and look at what they're supposed to and supposed to not do. So having something is very much better off than having nothing. Right, so you may or may not have all the right documents. At some point, you're quite likely to get stopped by police. Now, first thing you can do is just avoid it. So if you don't take main tourist roads, there's far less likely to be police. And again, outside of cities, traffic control boxes and the like, you're much less likely to have any kind of police interaction. Especially if you're in rural areas, what I've heard is they generally don't want to pull over tourists because the local police officers pretty much don't speak any English, so they just don't want the hassle. Depending on where you go, there might be small to medium to quite high levels of corruption. And that means you definitely need to have all your documentation, and you need to know where you stand. No matter what you're accused of or what you're challenged of, absolutely the best tactic is just to be polite, cordial, and listen to the traffic officer that stops you or pulls you over for whatever reason. Or what I've heard is an even better tactic is just pretend not to speak English. For example, if you start speaking French, they definitely aren't going to want to speak to you, but any other language that's not English and not the local language usually is enough to put them off. I have seen roadblocks where kids try and block the road. For these, I don't stop at, because they're either a scam or it's just the parents sending the kids out to try and earn some money when they should be in school. So don't stop at these, you're only asking for problems. If you do get a fine, regardless of whether or not you were doing something that you shouldn't have done, insist on getting that fine written down on paper and then going to a police station to pay it. Don't fight it there and then. I don't think it's going to come to anything, especially from what I've heard. However, if you push to have it written on paper and go and pay in a police station, then you'll rule out the fact that the police officer could be corrupt and just trying to get a bit of money off you. It's probably better that you don't offer a bribe, especially if you're recording, because this can put the police officer under some pressure. But if you do get your money out, then don't have a wallet full of cash. Put your big money somewhere else and just keep small notes. If you haven't got any money to give, then they're less likely to charge you a high price. You know, I wouldn't be in Phnom Penh and leaving my camera gear just on top of my bike, because of course someone opportunistic might come along and pinch it. But more than once I've left my phone and the keys in the ignition on my bike overnight, completely forgotten about it, come back the next day, nothing's gone, absolutely fine, and it was exactly where it was left. In fact, most places, even if you are gonna, as I recommend, take your valuables off of the bike, you don't want to put the steering lock on, because people park their bikes in really dense, and it's not unusual to park your bike up and come back and find it on the other side of the car park. Not because someone's taken it for a joyride, but because some parking attendant has moved it around. And on that subject of parking, it's always good to have some small money. Particularly in Indonesia, parking attendants work based on tips. So you might give just 1,000 rupiah, which is, I think, not even 10p. But by giving that to them for letting them park the bike and giving the security that they're going to watch over it, you don't have to worry about the bike, and that's how they earn their money. Same for people that they'll stand in the road with small flags, or maybe just put themselves in the way as a meat shield, and that will make sure that the torrent of oncoming disorganized traffic is parted like Moses parts the Red Sea, so that you have space to get out. When you know that someone's going to help you with something like that, and to be honest, some of the time it's forced on you, so, but for the sake of 1,000 rupiah, they're still helping you out anyway. Carry some very small notes with you. Always keep that really tiny change for tips for things like this. Just have that in your mouth or between your knuckles, so that as you're on the main road, just before you pull away, you can pass that to the parking attendant or anyone who helped you get out into the traffic, and they will appreciate you a lot. And then you can do it like the locals do.
Anyway, I said I was going to give you a survival guide, and I'll tell you my top tips now. I'm not going to win any awards for hot take of the century. This is all just super common sense stuff. But I don't want to sound like your mum, but hopefully it will mean it's just easier and safer for you anyway. The first thing is that, to be honest, it's not a race.
drive slower than you need to. Especially if you're used to riding in the UK, just go slow. You're on holiday, you've got nowhere to be in a hurry, take your time and enjoy it. If you ride slower, it gives you more time to think about what's coming up and see things happen. The riding speeds in these countries, they are much, much slower. I think the national speed limit in Vietnam is something like 60 kilometers an hour max. So just go slow, go with the flow. The second thing is to drive to your ability. So if you're brand new to a bike, don't set yourself up to fail. Don't pick a route that means you're gonna have to go off-road, tiny tracks, all day in the saddle. Just pick something nice and simple. And also, you've got to ride to everyone else's ability. So you might be amazing on a bike, but remember there's loads of people around you that even the locals, they might not be the most confident bikers, and they're gonna be loaded up with all sorts on the bike. They're not expecting you to come whizzing through the traffic. It's even less common to see that kind of riding in Southeast Asia. So ride to what they're expecting. Go with the flow and give loads of time and signals for turning, all these kinds of stuff. The third thing is not to rush into it. Take your time and learn first, not even how to use the bike, but how the traffic moves and how it works. I'm not saying to be an easy rider, that's a question for another video, but there's nothing wrong with taking some grab bikes around and sitting on the back as a passenger to see the traffic etiquette, how things move. But don't ride exactly like your taxi driver does, because they are probably crazy. When you do start, pick somewhere easy to learn, like an empty car park or something like this, or just some generally quiet back roads, and not near a river and not on the side of a mountain. That is a recipe for disaster. You can build up as you go. The quietest places are the best place. Finally, bring a mate. And if you haven't got any mates, go and make some while you're out there. That's part of traveling too. It's way more fun with a friend, and it means if you get stuck, then you've got someone to help you out as well. If you don't have any mates at all, you want to be in Sigma male, go and do your lone wolf kind of thing, then at least let someone know where you're going, whether they're someone in the hostel or someone back home at the very least. But the main thing is, don't worry and enjoy it. Make sure you're smiling in your helmet. And once you start, you'll get the hang of it super quick. At the end of the day, it's like riding a bike. How to do it. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one, my slimes.